step this way. For 2 nickels, 1 dime, a 10th part of a dollar. We've got the show if you've got the dime. It's just starting.
Fantasy Football Funhouse, Football Funhouse, Football Funhouse.
Hello and welcome to the. What are we? Where are we? Where are we right now?
Where are we?
You know
Who
what?
are we?
I keep going to say falafel. That's the problem. I keep going to say falafel, but we're not falafel anymore. And you know what? Sal was in my head this time because I'm thinking to myself, I got to come in hot. I got to come in aggressive. I feel better. I'm starting.
Just be a man, for God's sake.
I'm on the mend. And then I screw it up because I can't remember to say, Fantasy Football Funhouse instead of falafel. So welcome to the Fantasy Football Funhouse. I am Kevin Cotillo. Steve Marcus is here. Sal Lito is here on his iPad, even though he bought a brand new computer. So he's going to be a little salty today.
No, it's funny because when you weren't on, Kevin, when you were on your hiatus, I said to Steve, I'm very proud of him and I. We both have managed to not say Falafel House. And I put bets in that I would be the first one to say it, but
I didn't actually say it. I just
you froze like a deer.
I froze. I did. I froze a little bit. I did froze a little bit. You know what? I'm gonna rebound because we have a great show tonight. This is gonna be a very fun episode. I think all of the three of us have been looking forward to it for a long time because it is draft season. Draft season is upon us, Steve.
That's right. I've got a draft as soon as this podcast ends, maybe even during the end of this podcast, depending on how far we go into here. It is upon us. I've got drafts all weekend coming up next week. We've, of course, got the falafel draft on Labor Day, the evening of Labor Day. So
not Kevin.
He's going
to be there.
I will draft for falafel. There's no question about that. I will probably be at the event at some point. I just might be a little late. Might have to do the first couple of rounds remotely because I do have my home league. I think we're in our 12th year now of my home league. So and as we talked about, home leagues they're the bread and butter of fantasy football. It's what keeps us coming back. So I can't miss that.
Steve, you're playing against the Little Sisters of the Poor that live in your community again this year?
Now listen, that's not nice.
Is that
to talk
politically
about the
correct?
League that I absolutely dominated and crushed last year. But yes, I actually will be in that league again. We're having a live draft at our community clubhouse this year. So that's going to be a lot of fun. I've got 2 live drafts this year. Normally, I just do it as a recluse in the comfort of my own home. But I am going to venture out into the big bad world and draft live so I can smack everybody down in person.
So I'm the old one of the show, but you drafted a community center. I mean, that just sounds sounds brutal.
It's got it's got a full bar, not an open bar.
But I will say full bar, and I saw your prize from last year, and it was fantastic. So
that prize didn't look good.
I can't bash anything that gives away a prize like that.
How much of that prize is left? Anything?
Oh, are you kidding me? That was polished off during the Super Bowl, my friend. Polished off. It was $150 worth of distributed priced beer.
That's right. I remember you talking about your Super Bowl hangover. So
yeah, that was a quality prize. I look forward to winning it yet again.
So I will be drafting live on Saturday in the 25th year of the South Jersey Fantasy Football League, and a big surprise. I got a very big surprise this week. Dumb Cousin Donald, as Matthew Berry referred to him on this show. Many a moon ago.
DCD for short.
He called me up and he said, "Hey, Rick is out this year. We have an open spot." And they gave that spot to the other Sal Lito. That is correct.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Is now a member of the South Jersey Fantasy Football League. I started in that league when I was 21. He's 17. So it's nice to have him aboard. I fear that I may have taught him too much.
I was going to say, there's no question that he beat you.
I wouldn't worry about that, Sal.
Although, does he know how to read a newspaper? Or I mean, these days, I don't know.
That's why he's going to dominate the league. He's got technology. The rest of these old bastards don't have to use.
That's awesome, Sal. It's great to see that kind of tradition with fantasy football being carried on, and hopefully you'll get some more young blood in that league as you guys continue, and maybe it'll be a generational type league. It's funny to think about fantasy football where it's come, and that there could be now like second and third generations of leagues that are going to be starting up this year. So that's really good. And sort of touching on that, you put up our first article in the fantasyfootballfunhouse.com arena. It's the first article we published on the new website. Make sure you go check it out, fantasyfootballfunhouse.com, and you can look for Sal's article. And you got a little sentimental, a little touchy.
I get like that from time to time, right? And I always appreciate when Kevin puts together an agenda. And so after intro, he puts Sal's obligatory chance to talk about himself, which, I mean, it's hysterical because I got to say, I know I ramble on and talk about myself. I do these things, but hey, I like me. So, I was at work the other day doing some painting, and I saw Matthew put out a quick video on Instagram just thanking everybody, all the things that people had said about him writing his last love-hate column. And, it made me think. He seemed very touched in the video. He seemed very genuine, which Matthew is. We've dealt with him multiple times. He's been on the show. And I just thought back to that article, and I thought back to all the years that I read it. I thought back to my life and fantasy football and how it's intertwined in my life. And, you could go read the article. It's pinned to the top of my Twitter, and Matthew gave it a little quote tweet today, which absolutely blew it up. I mean, I've gotten tremendous amount of follows and a tremendous amount of people responding to me, all wonderful people. I thanked every individual person. And yeah, it's just been a 25-year journey through fantasy football for me, a 20-year journey of following Matthew Berry, crazy enough. And the fact that he helped us three find each other and come together on that app, as crazy as that seems. Start Falafel, to start the league, the podcast, the website, everything that we do. And to give us an opportunity, and me specifically an opportunity, to start to somewhat live that dream that I first had an idea of 20 years ago. So I meant to just write a quick response on Twitter to him, and it turned out to about 1,200 words. And I just decided to put an article form. And thank you, Kevin, for editing that beautifully. Always makes me sound very coherent. And I have
According
to say
to Steve,
myself,
there were typos.
It's all good. Those were probably in there already, and he just missed them. I was just saying,
not a bad thing.
I think personally, I think it was written well. So if I think that, it's got to be good.
It was a well-written article. I did very little to it, Sal, and you did a great job with it. I don't know that anyone who's listening to the podcast right now actually cares, but you're almost 3,000 views today. So on that article alone, which is,
it's crazy.
Is more traffic than we've had in the website for quite some time. So obviously people like it.
And we are also now able to say that Matthew Berry has quote tweeted every single article on the Fantasy Football Funhouse.
That's true.
That's pretty good.
Of the one.
That's efficient.
That is very true. All right. So if you are checking out Sal's article on fantasyfootballfunhouse.com, make sure you swing over to the podcast page, because you can find links to download the podcast. You can find links to share the podcast. You can find the blog pages for the podcast. You can even find the Gut Feelings podcast, which still remains on our feed. So if you're listening to this on YouTube, or if you're checking it out somewhere else and you want to know where to find it, you can go to the website to do that, and definitely read Sal's article, because it was a good one. All right, let's keep moving though.
Wait, don't gloss over the fact that, Steve, did you hear Kevin go all Boston?
The article.
It's like article.
The article. Check out the article. All right. Listen, we got to keep moving, guys, because we have a lot to get to tonight. It is the draft spectacular. But Steve, aside from Sal's article about Matthew Berry and his influence on not just Sal but us as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's another big event going on right now for Falafel. I know that we're Fantasy Football Funhouse, but our roots are Falafel, and I just think we need to take some time to wish Falafel a happy birthday.
There comes a time when you heed a certain call.
Okay. All right. That's great. You just keep going, Sal. Yes,
Falafel.
It is a happy birthday to Falafel today on this date. 3 years ago, we got all of this started, and everything that has happened since then, a lot of it, as Sal had talked about in his article, he's written other articles about Falafel and how we've gotten to the point where we are right now. And just knowing and getting the league back together, all three of the relegation leagues, all back together right now at this point. It seems like everything's coming back together. So to get all of this group of people that we have become friends with over all these years at this time, it is a great time of year. Although it's hectic getting drafts together, getting, league fees, all that kind of stuff, it can get a little overwhelming. It is a time where everybody seems to be in the same mindset and everyone's talking football. So I'm glad that Falafel's birthday falls right smack dab in the middle of it.
Yeah, it's perfect. For those of you who have somehow not heard the story, Falafel was a league that Steve started on the Fantasy Life app. It was appropriately named the Fantasy Life App Fantasy Football League, FLAFFL, Falafel. And Sal and I are both obviously founding members as well. Steve puts out a post. Lots of us answered it. Ends up becoming a 16-team league that blossoms into a 3-tiered relegation league with I can't do the math.
16, 14, 40, 52.
42 teams, is it?
52.
52 teams. That's correct. So it's a lot of fun. We shout out to everyone in Falafel. Happy birthday to us. But for now, we got to get everyone ready for their drafts, and that starts with you, Steve, because you are the one who needs the most help. We're gonna do some categories tonight. We are we talked about this a lot before the show, trying to come up with some clever names, change some things. We had some categories in mind for players that we want to talk about. Ultimately, none of us are very creative, so we have no good titles. But we're going to start off by talking about the best and worst values in drafts so far. We're going to use 4for4 ADP for the most part here. You can go to 4for4.com and check out their ADP, their multi-site ADP tool. It is really awesome, great resource, particularly this time of year. So go over and check them out.
Not to mention, Josh Moore gave me a free 4for4 T-shirt last week. So,
wow, even better. So keep Sal getting these free T-shirts by going over there. But Steve, before we get into your best and worst values in drafts so far, Sal, there's another tool that we should probably talk about, right?
Yeah, all DFS players and sports bettors, listen up. No more getting crushed by the pros. With the quantedge.com, you have the tools you need to play like a pro. With a lineup optimizer, an injury tool, wide receiver cornerback matchups, and a head-to-head tool, you will be armed with everything you need to win. Make up to 150 lineups in seconds. Get a true understanding of players' value, see the week's matchups to exploit, and compare 2 players to help you make that decision you are on the fence about at thequantedge.com. It doesn't stop with groundbreaking tools. With 10 industry experts on staff, you will also get exclusive access to over 20 betting and fantasy articles and podcasts a week. And you can join TQE community by participating in a premium membership chat. We here at the Fantasy Football Funhouse have a special deal for our loyal listeners. Using promo code FFFunhouse, you will get 15% off the season-long subscription. But you have to act now. That deal only lasts till tonight, August 23rd. But boy, I guarantee you that if you put this deal in 24th, 25th, you're going to get a discount on the TQE season-long package, which normally costs $99.99. You will get that at 15% off. Go to thequantedge.com now if you're listening live, or now if you're listening on record.
And remember, if Sal guarantees it, that means Steve will cover the difference if you don't. So just keep that in mind. We said that regularly. Steve's ready to throw money down for you. So, all right, Steve, we're going to start off with you. Best and worst values in drafts so far. What do we got?
Best value. This should come as no surprise to anybody who has ever listened to this podcast ever. The best value of the draft has got to be Jamal Williams. It has to be. The starting running back for the Green Bay Packers. He is going 9.03 in the 12th round, 99th overall as RB37. He is a starting running back. I know everybody is worried about Aaron Jones. They're worried about Ty Montgomery. 2 guys that have shown us that, one, they cannot ever stay on the field. And when they do, they only do it for a short amount of time. And then they're back out on the field, or they're back off the field. They continuously get injured. Aaron Jones dealing with a suspension right now. Jamal Williams has gotten a ton of praise from the coaching staff. He is a well-rounded player. He was the RB8 overall over the second half of last season. He is going to make a huge leap this year. I am so happy that Jamal Williams is so cheap because that means I get to own him everywhere this year.
Pretty swell looking too, that kid.
Yeah, not bad. He's not bad.
Oh, that's weird. That took a weird direction. I did not expect that. So, Steve, my question to you is this, because I've been touting Ty Montgomery, throughout the majority of the offseason because his value's been lower than the other three. I seems to find Aaron Jones right now to see where he's going. Sal told me that he dropped below Ty Montgomery, but I think my point still remains. I'm taking the guy that I can get the cheapest in this offense because I think they're all going to be used.
I don't necessarily think they will. I think Ty Montgomery will find ways to get on the field, whether as a third down back role, maybe sometimes, they run him as a slot receiver. But I don't think that he is going to take work away from Jamal Williams to a point where he's not able to easily overcome his value where you're taking him in the draft. Who are you taking in the 9th round that's got more upside than someone like a starting running back for a very good offense in the NFL? Who?
I guess I'm not guaranteed that he's and maybe he's the starter in name, but I'm not guaranteed that he's not getting workhorse back. Like I don't think he's getting 25 carries a game.
So no, but a few people are getting 25
when you
carries.
say starter though, that's kind of what you're implying, right? You're throwing that term out there to imply that he's going to get the majority of touches, right?
I would assume that he's going to get the vast majority of first and second down work and the vast majority of goal line work. And what more would you want from a running back, especially at the value in which you're taking him?
So here's my and Sal, I know you have a point.
No,
but we're going to keep ignoring you for right now because my other point is this. You just asked who else would you take around that same, in the 9th round as a starting running back? And you're right. There aren't many, but there are a lot of wide receivers in that general range that I really like. And on a lot of my teams, I've already taken a good number of running backs by the 9th round. So I'm looking at those cheaper wide receivers. So that's the only other caveat.
Well, yeah, you as being the proponent of John Brown and Tyler Lockett and Dante Moncrief, you are allowed to wait till the 16th round to start drafting all your wide receivers.
All right, Sal, I know you've been chomping to make a point here. So
just to let you know, so Aaron Jones is going one spot ahead of Ty Montgomery. They're going 42nd and 43rd running backs overall, 116 and 117 overall off the board. So the one guy in that neighborhood, Steve, that I look at the challenge that, and again, I don't even hate the Jamal Williams point. I think you're correct. Mike McCarthy came out and said this week he expects big things from him. Going at 102 overall, 3 spots behind Jamal Williams is Chris Carson. We know Rashad Penny's nicked up and he is practicing, but Chris Carson appears to be the starter there. And we've had a lot of this talk where, you don't spend that trying to draft capital on a running back to not play him. But between him and Ronald Jones and some of the other rookie running backs who are falling behind a little bit, I think me personally, I would probably take Chris Carson ahead of him, but that's my personal preference. I can't see arguing with you about the Jamal Williams point.
Good.
All right, so do we want to go with the rest of the best, or do you want to stay there?
The rest of the best, and also I don't think we can take 7 minutes on every player. We
might have to move these along. So, which is not good because Sal's next, and that never goes quickly. So
I'll be as quick as possible.
Who's your best?
So I remember back in 1995. I have Jarvis Landry down as my best. So Jarvis Landry is going at the 10th pick in the 4th round of 12-team drafts. Number 46 overall, wide receiver, number 20. And the reason I say he's a great value there is because Jarvis Landry finished 4th overall last year, 13th overall in 2016, 11th overall in 2015. The guy has been a top 15 wide receiver, top 13 wide receiver 3 years in a row in PPR, yet he's going as the 20th wide receiver this year. I realize he moved to Cleveland. Everybody gets scared of Cleveland. They're going to throw the ball. First play in tonight's game was the Jarvis Landry. The guy has the personality and the attitude you want to see in a frontline wide receiver, any ability. He's shown the ability to make 100-plus catches multiple years in a row. I think he was at 96 last year. He's going to be the main focal point of this offense. There's no reason for me to believe he will not finish higher than 2 wide receivers who are going ahead of him. And that's Amari Cooper, who is going as the 16th wide receiver overall. Amari Cooper has finished 35th, 16th, and 21st in the last 3 years. And then Juju Smith-Schuster, who, to me, in a PPR, cannot possibly be considered better than Jarvis Landry because he's going to catch probably about 30 or 40 more balls than Juju Smith-Schuster. He's a great big play receiver, great get downfield, but he's going 39th overall, 17th, and both of those guys are going at the front of the 4th round. So for me, you could sit back and wait, grab a running back at the end of the 3rd, beginning of the 4th, and you might be able to get Landry as late as the early 5th round because he's at 410. So that's my point, Kev.
I like it. I actually don't. I like Jarvis Landry, like we've talked about already. I draft wide running backs early, so Landry's a great guy that you can get at that range. That's going to solidify your roster if you already have a couple of running backs on there. So I like the call there. I'm not going to argue with it. I am glad that you brought it up because it sort of helps me illustrate my point on my guy, which is Corey Davis going in, a couple of rounds after that towards the end of the 6th round at 6.10 or 70th overall. This is amazing to me because, look, I get it. He only played 11 games last year. He's, only had 375 yards. He didn't score a touchdown. We know that the Tennessee offense runs the ball a lot, or at least they ran the ball a lot last year. We can expect that with Dion Lewis and Derrick Henry, they're probably going to run the ball a decent amount again this year. But we're talking about a guy that was drafted 5th overall, that has had a tremendous training camps by all accounts, and has incredible talent on an offense that should expect to throw a little more than they did last year, that has a broken down Rashard Matthew who may or may not be ready to start the season. Looks like he's getting closer to health, but we have Delaney Walker, who's basically the Walking Dead, and I'm not sure who else is even catching passes on this offense. So, look,
I do.
Who?
We'll get to him.
Okay, okay. My point is he got 65 targets last year. I have a pretty good idea that I'm gonna say he's gonna double that. Here's the thing, and maybe they call this a bold prediction or whatever, but Sal, I'm gonna tell you my thoughts are that Corey Davis will outproduce Jarvis Landry this year.
Woo!
And
that's a Dante Moncrief 8th overall type bold prediction.
You
haven't done one of those in a few years.
You can get him 2 rounds later. Put it on the floor, Steve.
Put it on the floor.
2 rounds later. Corey Davis will outproduce Jarvis Landry this year. So for me, if I can get him in the back end of the 6th,
is this a points overall or a fantasy points per game type of bet?
We'll do a points per game in case there's injuries for either one of them, obviously. But I think that I expect both of them to finish the season pretty healthy. So,
all right, I like it.
Kevin, you might as well roll right into your worst.
All right, so let's get right to the worst then. Jerick McKinnon is my worst, and look, I don't hate the player. I know that this is actually late for what we've seen of him before. I mean, we talked dynasty most of the offseason, and in startup drafts, McKinnon was going even earlier than this. He's at the 2.12 right now, so 24th overall. Just insane to me. There is no way that I'm taking this guy. If you're picking at the end of the 2nd round, that means you went, 1st overall, right? You probably took Gurley or Bell or DJ or whoever you like at that number 1 spot. And DJ. Now you're coming back and you're going to take your 2nd running back at Jerick McKinnon, who's not a bad 2nd running back, but think about what that's going to do to your wide receiver core. And I think you can get better guys there. We don't know what kind of production you're going to get out of McKinnon. There's guys like LaShawn McCoy and Joe Mixon and, guys and
now
other
you
guys.
You don't like Joe Mixon.
I'm not a Joe Mixon guy.
I will say that you hate him. Would you take him in above Jerick McKinnon?
No. At
the end of the 2nd round?
My feelings on Mixon. He just won't be on my roster. I wouldn't take him at all.
All right.
So,
fair enough.
But I think the value is the same, right? I guess it's similar, except that if you can get him later, I think then obviously Mixon's a better value. I don't see these guys producing as he's the running back 13, right? Is what he is. And I don't think he's going to be the running back 13. I'll put it that way. I think he's much more in line with the running back 20 than he might, at best. So
at best.
I've been in agreement with that all off season that McKinnon was going too high. He was originally going, towards the top of the second round, but even the back of the second round is too much for me. It's not a guy I want there. It's not a guy that's got a proven track record of success as a lead guy and carrying the load. So I'd be much happier with some other guys you can get in that area. I agree, Kevin.
Plus Jeremy McNichols. I mean, we've seen it.
Well, watch out.
This took a turn really, really for the worst.
All right, Sal, who's your worst?
A guy I mentioned before, and I was talking about the rookie running backs that have fallen behind Ronald Jones. It's been about a week or so since we've heard that Peyton Barber is going to be the starting running back in this offense, and he is still going in the 6th round, 72nd overall, and RB number 29 overall. Listen, he's not the guy. He's not the guy right now. Peyton Barber was given the start last week and looked very good. Some people might say that Charles Sims was put on the IR today and get excited, but that means good things for Jaquiz Rogers, not for Ronald Jones. So it's not a guy I want to spend. I just don't want to be grabbing a guy in that position, which is flex area, who I don't feel is going to have an opening to touches. I'd rather go with Tariq Cohen in a PPR league that's going, it's the 33rd overall running back in the 8th round, a full round and 3 picks later after Ronald Jones. So for me, it's very easy to take a player like Tariq Cohen over him.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all. There's no reason why Ronald Jones at this point, with everything that's come out, should be going higher than Jamal Williams. No point at all.
Right?
Oh,
Jamal Williams. That's
Am I right?
Yeah. No, that's not even. Yeah, you're right. You're definitely right. Jamal Williams, Chris Carson, all of them.
Yeah, both of those guys. All right. So my worst, I go back to the Green Bay Packers. My worst value that I've seen so far it's Jimmy Graham. He is going right now in the back end of the 4th round, 4.11. So 12-team leagues, 47th overall as the tight end number 4. Throw away everything that, he's coming back from the injury a year removed. Obviously, he played all year for Seattle last year. He did well there in terms of his touchdown production, but Green Bay they've never been a team that has targeted the tight end position well. They might not have a ton of red zone targets, and so Jimmy Graham might be able to step up into a role there. But to invest a 4th round pick on a tight end that is in he's first year on the team, he's in a new system, new chemistry, all that kind of stuff, all the baggage that comes along with that. I just don't understand how you can invest that type of draft capital into someone like that. You're basically baking in all the upside with where you're getting him. And I would not want to put that type of investment into a Jimmy Graham, not at that spot, going way too high. We were saying the same thing when Evan Ingram was going at this spot, and I would rather have Evan Ingram over Jimmy Graham this year, and I still wouldn't be taking him at this spot. So the fact that Jimmy Graham has gotten this high in the draft board is it's kind of amazing to me. I don't understand it.
I can't disagree. My number 4 overall tight end is still Greg Olsen, a guy who's super relied on by his quarterback, So there's no way I'd be taking Jimmy Graham over him. And if I'm going to go with a tight end in the 4th round, I might as well go a little bit earlier and try and get Ertz, Kelsey, or Gronk, because why would I want to spend that high of a pick for a guy who's not even close to the talent of those 3 guys? So I can't disagree with you, Steve. This isn't great. We're all agreeing with each other.
Yeah, it's certainly not ideal. We're gonna have to work on that. Ertz going at 309, right? So, why would you take? Why? Oh man, that's terrible. Jimmy Graham in the 4th. I agree with you there. Tight end is a position that, as I do most of the time, I am waiting a long time. I'm not reaching for the top 3 or 2, 3, whatever you want to call it. And I'm definitely going to wait on that. All right, we got to keep moving. We're a half an hour into the show, and we've gotten through 1 category. So
that's great. That was a double category. That was a daily double.
These next ones should go pretty quickly. We're going to talk now about players we've grown to love. So obviously, these are guys that maybe throughout the offseason or even more so into camp, we've started to, they've piqued our interest a little bit more. And Sal, you're going to kick us off with this one.
Yeah, Kevin, before I actually get into that, I'd like to mention that if you are joining us tonight or you're downloading this for the first time because you can't find us with that Matthew Berry article, do us a favor and check out gridironexperts.com, where you can also find this show. Every single episode is also available on their feed. And if you want to give, a little bit of love to them and download the show from there, they'd greatly appreciate it. We'd greatly appreciate it. It's a great site with tons of great articles, a lot of great writers, and they also have a swag store as well. So check out Gridiron Experts and all the fun stuff we have there. So yeah, a guy who I've grown to love, speaking of tight ends, we all know that I'm the tight end guy. A guy I've come to love over the last few weeks is David Njoku. David Njoku is going in the 9th round. It's 7th pick in the 9th round, 103rd overall, tight end 11. I made this proclamation on the last week's episode that he will finish with more points, total points, than Evan Ingram. And Evan Ingram is going as the 6th overall tight end in the 5th round. So almost exactly 4 rounds later, you can get a guy who came into the league with a little bit higher upside, I think, last year. Just a little bit. They were both in that group of 3 tight ends from last year. And you can say, well, Evan Ingram got 115 targets last year. Yeah, he did. But Odell Beckham? That's not
Odell Beckham. Wow.
Odell Beckham Jr.
Nice.
He was not there. Saquon Barkley, he was not there. This is going to be a much different offense this year. And while I think Evan Ingram is an excellent tight end and a guy I would take later in a draft, I'm just not going to get him later in the draft. So I want to take another guy who, to me, is a freakish athlete. He appears to be the second in line for targets right now in Cleveland. We documented last week about all the guys who are having issues there. And you could see he was in on the first drive of this game. He caught the second pass of the game. He's going to be a guy I feel is heavily used and heavily counted on in the red zone. So for me, David Njoku, guy I've come to love over the last few weeks.
I like the take. I think that Njoku is definitely a guy that I'd be targeting, especially given the how late you can get him. I don't know that he's going to outproduce Evan Ingram. I like your points there. I think it'll be pretty close. I'm just not 100% all in on the Cleveland Brown offense as the way everyone else is evident by the fact that I think Corey Davis will outscore Jarvis Landry. But so I think Ingram and Njoku are a toss-up. But if you're telling me that I can get the similar production for a guy going that much later, then yeah, give me that all day long. My guy that I've grown to love is Tariq Cohen. I was not a huge Tariq Cohen guy last year. I mean, obviously he had a few games where he was, outstanding, kind of dwindled towards the end of the season, but still finished with, 370 rushing yards and a couple of touchdowns and 350 receiving yards and a touchdown. So overall, not a bad season. What I like about him this year is that while we may hear that Jordan Howard is working on his pass catching ability and improving a little bit, he's not. We know what Jordan Howard is.
I don't know, Kevin's been at practice.
Jordan Howard is a running back that is going to stick to the ground. So, he may catch a few passes, but we know that he's not going to be super, super active in the passing game. I think that Cohen is a guy that will see a lot of different looks. He will be lined up in a lot of different areas in the formation. And I think that you can see the targets going up from last year. I don't know that he's going to get much more in the rushing game. He had 87 carries last year, so maybe that kicks up a little bit. Maybe he gets a few extra carries if they're in some better game scripts and they have the ability to run a little bit more. Maybe he sees a little bit of an uptick there. But where he really is going to see more, he had 71 targets last year. I can see him challenging for 90 to 100 targets this year because I think they're going to throw the ball a little bit. And I like Allen Robinson, and obviously everyone's darling is Anthony Miller right now, and I like Anthony Miller, but he is still a rookie. I'm not a huge Burton guy. I'm a little further down on Burton than most, and I think Cohen is going to be a pivotal part of that offense because I think they're going to want to utilize his versatility. So I can see Cohen getting more targets and a few extra runs this year, which make him great value when you're talking about a running back that you can take in the 8th round, 86th overall. the 33rd running back coming off the board, and I think he's a flex play every week.
Hey, and arrows up if you're in return yardage leagues, because the guy does play special teams. Steve, I don't know if that was your point. I apologize, but absolutely.
It was not. So thanks for adding some more to the conversation there, Sal. I will just say his ADP alone shows the shift from dynasty to redraft, because Tariq Cohen is not lasting until the 8th round in any type of dynasty leagues right now. He is much more of a hot commodity than that. So knowing that you can get a guy as electric as he is, we all remember what he was able to do on the field last year. Jordan Howard is not going anywhere, but I don't think Tariq Cohen is going anywhere either. I think you can rely on the same type of production, even a little bit more, like Kevin said, based on the coaching changes that they've made. I think that he definitely has a little more room for upside as well. So getting a guy like that with that type of upside in the 8th round is something that I definitely agree with. You're taking all upside. So, and that's kind of what I feel like I'm taking as well with my player that I've grown to love, and that's Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller has had a very up and down relationship with fantasy owners. He's been hyped up so many times, and he never really seems to come through, or he does for a short amount of time, then he gets hurt, or something else happens. Last year, when we saw Lamar Miller on the field with Deshaun Watson, we saw what that offense could potentially look like. And if we have him on the field for all 16 games this year, meaning Deshaun Watson, we have an idea of what they might be able to do. And Lamar Miller could have a role, a very heavy volume role for that running back job in Houston. We don't know when Dante Foreman is coming back. He's coming back from an Achilles tear, which is a tough injury for running backs to come back from. So he has definitely got a lot of space. Doesn't have someone breathing down his neck, and you're being able to get him in the 5th round. And if you look in the 5th round of 12-team leagues right now, there seems to be a lot of guys in there that could have a ton of upside. So even if you don't like Lamar Miller, check out this type of ADP. Look at the guys that are going there when you're building your team, when you're getting into your drafts, because there's a lot of different guys in that area that you could add. But Lamar Miller seems to be the guy on the offense that has the most overall upside based on all the skill position players and everything that they can put together. So he's somebody that I have definitely grown a liking to as the drafts have gone on this year.
Yeah, and we're in the middle of the Sleeper Wire Pro-Am draft right now, and just today it was the 4th round, and I needed a little of assistance from you two guys, and I threw 2 wide receivers and a running back name out there to you, and it was Jay Ajayi, who's going 1 running back spot ahead of Lamar Miller in ADP right now. And when you guys saw that Miller was available, both of you said you'd prefer Miller over him, and I was happy to do that, and I like it, Steve. For some reason, when I see the names Kenyon Drake, Jay Ajayi, and Lamar Miller, it feels so Dolphin-y. But none of them really get me super excited. But, I think Lamar Miller has a lot of promise with his pass-catching ability in that offense.
Yeah, again, I mean, the value is there, right? So Steve's, talking about a guy that's 50th overall, and you've probably taken a couple of wide receivers on your team, and you have a good base already. So you're, if he's your running back too, I think you're going to be really happy with him for the season. So I like that take, Steve. We're gonna move along, and I'm gonna start us off with players that we like that we don't think others like as much. So these are guys that are probably, maybe you don't like them at all, and we're going to try and change your mind, or maybe you're going to be able to get them later in your draft because other players don't like them very much. My guy is Mike Williams. I get it. Mike Williams had a terrible year last year. He was hurt. He had like 11 receptions overall, but he went 2 spots after Corey Davis in the draft. He's a very talented wide receiver who didn't really get much of a chance because of his injuries and because, frankly, the Chargers season itself wasn't very good last year. So, but this is a guy who's in an offense with a quarterback who loves to throw the ball. He's a tall, big-bodied wide receiver, 6'4", 220 pounds. Again, with an offense that has no tight ends to speak of. Steve, do you know who the tight ends are in LA?
Virgil Green.
Yeah.
Oh, Virgil Green.
Yeah,
I remember him.
Exactly. There are no tight ends, so they need someone to step up in the red zone. And Mike Williams is one of his biggest strengths is the red zone. I think that he's going to be a big target for Phillip Rivers. And on top of that, Keenan Allen, while call it fluky, say injuries, whatever you want to say, he clearly has not been the picture of health throughout his career. There's
that is so rude. That is so rude.
There's always a chance with Keenan Allen that that things don't go his way. I hate to predict injuries for guys, but it is a concern.
How many 16-game seasons in a row does he have to play for him to shed that moniker?
All of them, literally all of them.
Okay. All right.
So how about just 2 in a row? We'll take 2.
Yeah, that would be good. And so, and the other guy that you could get is in the offense, Tyrell Williams, right? Who had some talent, has flashed a little bit. I get it. But I think Phillip Rivers is going to throw enough to support 3 wide receivers in that capacity. And I think Mike Williams is a better wide receiver than Tyrell Williams. So I think you're going to see a huge jump for Mike Williams this year. And he's going at 1305, 149th overall as the 54th wide receiver. So you're getting him very late. I think it's definitely worth a flyer to take him at that spot.
Earlier in the offseason, Kevin, I made a case for Tyrell Williams over Mike Williams, and I've been won over to the Mike Williams side. Watching him play and seeing him healthy in camp and seeing what he could do with that touchdown in last week's game, just bodying up a guy and just taking a ball like a man from a child. He looks every bit what you expected when he was coming out of college. So I think the value is tremendous. I agree with you there. Screw you, Tyrell Williams. Get out of here.
That is Tyrell Williams, the wide receiver to own on the Chargers last year. To some people, remember. Everyone remember that? He was the guy. He was the guy you wanted.
Who's going to be the guy? Yeah. No, I don't think I said that. Actually, Steve, you were a Tyrell Williams guy, weren't you?
I was a fan, but I mean, I own Keenan Allen in a lot of places. I was not writing him off. I heard many people saying Tyrell Williams was the guy to own.
So
anywho, we're not going to talk about him.
It's an amalgam of people.
Let's just keep moving here. We got a lot of categories to get to.
All right. Players that I like that others don't.
It's like I'm not even here.
Kevin gave me some flack about this. Like, other people don't like John Ross. Well, evidenced by his 19th round draft, his ADP in the 19th round, wide receiver 72. Yeah, I would go ahead and say that not a lot of people like John Ross right now, but he is the wide receiver 2 on an offense that's got a really terrible offensive line. Their defense is not what it was just a few years ago. They're going to have to throw the ball a little bit. He was a top 10 draft pick just a year ago, the fastest guy in the draft. He almost won an island, for Christ's sake.
Draft history.
God, he must kick himself every day for not putting those shoes on.
He is a good wide receiver. He also, like Mike Williams, like Kevin just talked about a little bit ago, was hampered by injuries last year. There was an article that came out about him just a few weeks ago, talking about all the things that he was battling just personally as a first-year wide receiver, as such a high draft pick. He has definitely seemed recommitted this year. He has taken a step, and so I think that John Ross is a huge value. You're getting him at the very end of your draft. And, Mohamed Sanu and Marvin Jones, these guys were people that were playing behind A.J. Green before that were very high draft value that people thought very highly of. I don't see why John Ross should be anything less than that. He's got just as much talent. He can be that same exact guy. So take a chance on him in your last pick of whatever draft you're in, and it can't do anything but pay off. Or it could suck, but it's probably not going to.
How's that for confidence? Yo, Steve, what confidence is?
Yeah, tell me what confidence is with this next pick.
Well, my next guy. John Ross, by the way, I have in one dynasty league. It's a 32-team dynasty, so I need all the help I can get in there. So if you could help me out with that, I appreciate it, Mr. Ross. The guy I have is my homer pick of the show tonight. It's Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson is a guy I've been a fan of for years when he was with Green Bay. Just love the attitude, the personality, and the overall way that he plays. And I think that his demise is severely overrated. I've heard nothing but good things coming out of camp for him. And I think that he's a guy who goes in there and knows how to play his role. So he's not a guy you have to spend a high draft capital on. You could get him in the 9th round, the 100th overall player, wide receiver 41. So he's going to be a wide receiver 4 on your team, most likely, a late 3 to a 4. And he's a guy who's got history, who knows, you get to that point with guys like this where they know how to outsmart defenders if they've lost a step. He claims he didn't lose a step. He came out yesterday, was very angry, and had a lot to say to people. So I feel like he has something he wants to prove. Very interestingly enough, this week, third week of the preseason, the Raiders are playing the Packers. So it's going to be interesting to see what he does this week. But, Jordy Nelson is a guy I've actually seen him start to creep up in actual drafts we've been doing. I've seen him go even a little bit higher than his spot. So it's getting me worried that he might not be there when it's time for me to draft. But I don't want to waste too much more time. It's the guy, and go with him. Take him. He's my dude.
Maybe if you send Cousin Donald your letter drafting him now, by the time it gets there, you'll still have him at this pick.
Dear dumb Cousin Donald.
I want Jordy Nelson.
All that matters is the postmark date.
You guys haven't even moved to fax. That's the best part. It's still like it's snail mail. It's not even.
I remember
fax
when
machines.
I remember when he actually used to send me faxes. It was funny because I didn't have a fax machine, so I used to have to go around and ask people, "You got a fax number I can send to my cousin?"
Oh my God.
Oh man. All right, we digress. We're going to move on to players that we don't like that other people are drafting a little bit higher. And Steve, who do you have for this category?
All right, my guy for this category is going to be Kenyon Drake. He's going at 312, 36th overall as RB17. And what it is with him is that I kind of feel like you're drafting him at his ceiling. He's never been the guy that's been given the opportunity to have a full season's workload. It's always been when someone else has got injured, when he's kind of been the last guy standing, where he's gotten that opportunity. And I will not argue, he's been great when he has gotten that opportunity. But I don't see him as someone that can stand up to that kind of workload for an entire season. And so drafting him at the back end of the third round, it's kind of just like the same thing with Jerick McKinnon. You're putting a lot of faith in somebody where you're almost drafting him at his ceiling, where you could be taking other guys, that have done it before, like Salah said, that have been there, that what kind of volume is they've gotten. They've shown that they can do it year after year. Kenyon Drake is somebody that's stepping into this role. They've got Frank Gore there. They drafted another rookie running back in Kellen Balaj. They've got other options there. So I just don't know that he is going to pay off. He very well could, but I would see him as being as a running back 15 or 14 at the very most for a season long if he was able to sustain that all year. I don't see him being as much of an upside guy as the other guys could be. So I feel like you're drafting him at his value, or as high as it could be at his ceiling.
And he's very dolphin-y.
Very dolphin-y. It's just something about porpoises.
Oh, jeez. Allen Robinson. Please get to Allen Robinson quickly.
Yeah, Allen Robinson is a guy who, after he had his big breakout year in 2015, where he finished 6th overall, I jumped on him high the next year, and he had an absolutely downer of a year. He finished 28th overall for wide receivers next year, and then was injured last year, did not play at all. And before people go, well, he played with Blake Bortles, that's why. Yeah, he also played with Blake Bortles when he was the 6th overall wide receiver. Don't blame Bortles, you Bortleistic bums. All right. I don't want to take this guy in the 4th round when there's other players there I can get that I like Demaryius Thomas, like Marvin Jones. Marvin Jones is the 24th wide receiver overall, and he's going late in the 5th round, almost a full round later. He's a guy I'd much rather take a running back or a higher upside wide receiver in the 4th round over him, and wait on Marvin Jones in the back end of the 5th.
I would disagree with you here. I like Allen Robinson this year. I do. I think that in the 4th round, in some cases, I've been taking him as my 4th or as my first wide receiver, and to get a guy with that kind of ceiling, in my opinion, he may end up, little less than Demaryius Thomas. I love Demaryius Thomas, by the way, but I think that he's got a higher ceiling than most of the guys you're going to get in that range. That's my thing with it. You may be right. He may end up lower, but I think he's got a better ceiling than those guys.
Chris Hogan or Allen Robinson?
Allen Robinson.
I think I'd lean Hogan myself, personally.
I like Hogan a lot. I mean, I think he's severely undervalued right now.
I mean, he's the 2nd pick in the 6th round, Hogan. Yeah. A round and change later. And I'd just rather wait. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's other things I could get where A-Rob is going. But again, I think I'm actually in a minority, but that's why these are players that we don't like that others do.
That's right. Speaking of which, my guy is Deshaun Watson. Everyone loves Deshaun Watson, and I get it. I understand he's a dynamic player. He's got an injury, but he's coming off an injury. We have a small sample size for his production, and he's going 4.07. That's ridiculous.
Morons.
He's currently at the QB3. QB3.
That's too high. That's too high.
So nuts. I don't even know that I need to build a case against this. How does everyone not know that this is insane? Russell Wilson, Cam Newton, Drew Brees, Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins, Andrew Luck, Ben Roethlisberger, and Matthew Stafford are all guys going behind him. This is ridiculous.
The Carson Wentz, Kirk Cousins
spot,
that is where I start to be like, okay, you can make a case for either one of those guys. You can start going either way. But everyone you said above him, I don't see it. I don't see it.
The only two quarterbacks going above him right now are Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. We're talking about a guy that had a 7-game sample. It's nuts. I get it. The rushing ability. I get it. He has one of the top 3 wide receivers in the game right now. I understand that, but it's just nuts to me. I'm not taking a quarterback in the 4th round in general, and I'm certainly not reaching for a guy that's coming off a major knee injury. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say about Deshaun Watson. We can move
That's
on
all I've got to say about that.
Players we are avoiding altogether. And Sal, I know you're first on this list, but I'm going to start off because Steve kind of jumped in on my list as well. He didn't pay attention to the rules. I specifically filled out the agenda first so that I could get all my guys, and then he took one. So my two guys.
He double dipped.
I did double dip. So the guys that I'm avoiding this year are Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill. And the reason I put them both together is because, for one, they're on the same team. I feel like they might cancel each other out a little bit. That's kind of my point there. And you're talking about getting Sammy Watkins in the 7th round, Tyreek Hill in the 3rd. So I don't want to spend those prices on either of them because I think, either of them could be the guy. The other one could be the guy. I don't think week to week you're going to know which one it is. But you're going to stick these guys, both of them, in your starting lineups, and you're going to have weeks where they get you very little because the other guy's going to go off. So I just don't like these guys together. Steve, why were you so down on Hill as opposed to Sammy, or was it the pair?
I was more down on Tyreek Hill just based on where he was going overall. You've got T.Y. Hilton going just around behind him, or just a spot behind him, I'm sorry. And he is somebody that is the obvious number 1 wide receiver on his team. Sammy Watkins has wide receiver 1 talent. So these guys, like you said, it's not like, oh, this guy's the obvious number 1 and this guy's the number 2 because, they came from different schools. They came from they're different in different tiers or anything like that. Sammy Watkins is a wide receiver 1 talent. So Tyreek Hill is more, just like most of my picks have been for this podcast, is more of a value base. I think there are more guys around him that are more established, have a better path to volume. Tyreek Hill, it's been talked about a lot that his red zone value is very low. You're banking on Deshaun Jackson type production with the deep ball, him breaking free, which he's got the talent to do that, but banking on that type of thing from week to week fantasy production is not something that's necessarily going to win you a lot of games. But instead of just reiterating Tyreek Hill for me, I want to ask you, Kevin, what does that mean for you in terms of Patrick Mahomes? If you are down on both of these guys, you don't like both of them together, does that mean you're not a fan of Patrick Mahomes? Or are you saying that there's enough to go around, it's just going to be spread between these two so much that you're not going to be able to pinpoint which one to start each week? Each one is going to burn you at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, for one, it's more about the fact that I think they're going to cancel each other out, particularly Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill. But you're also talking about, Sal's boy Travis Kelce in the mix there, who's gonna eat, and Kareem Hunt and other guy Spencer Ware, who I think is gonna catch some passes. There's a lot of
Spencer Ware.
I think he's gonna catch some passes this year. You watch.
But I'm sorry, anybody watching live, did you just see Sal doing a Shaq style Gold Bond commercial shoulder waggle?
Yeah. But yeah, so I think the offense will be productive. I don't know who it's going to be week to week, so that makes me nervous. But with Mahomes, I think he'll be a serviceable quarterback. I don't love the 10th round draft pick. That might be a little early for me. There's probably a couple of guys I would take after him. Mariota, for example, Alex Smith, Derek Carr. these are guys that I feel a little more, even Eli Manning, because we're talking redraft, I feel a little more comfortable with than I do Mahomes, just because I've never seen Mahomes. I don't know what he's going to give me.
So I'm on Mahomes this year, and I think that obviously I'm banking on the high upside, right? There's obviously a possibility he crash and burns. It scares the hell out of me how much I always end up liking the Kansas City players and teams, seeing as I'm a Raider fan, because I do like Kelsey. I've been the Spencer Ware guy in the past. I liked Hunt coming out of college last year, was disappointed. He landed in KC. I've never, ever, ever liked Sammy Watkins. I've been the guy in this show who has come out against Sammy Watkins over and over and over again. Yet I find myself taking him at that value so much this year. Like Steve pointed out, he has wide receiver 1 upside. I know that you're basically saying Kevin the cancel out factor, and I think that's it's a real possibility. The likelihood of them having big games in the same week probably doesn't exist that often. Very rare that that's going to happen. But I do think there's room for both wide receivers. Tyreek Hill has looked real good in practice. So
you're paying wide receiver.
I'm not taking him. I'm not taking him there. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying he's looked real good. I don't have any Tyreek stock anywhere. In fact, I traded him in Capitalist Pigs 2 and took the money I got back for that and went and bought Adam Thielen, who I like a lot better. So that was a trade-off I basically made, not a direct trade-off, but what I ended up with this year. So moving over to my guy, it's Jay Ajayi. So now we've gotten to all those Dolphiny running backs. Jay Ajayi came over and he's with Philly, and Philly's run game has looked pretty good tonight, actually. And does anybody know who has been running all night as the lead guy in Philly?
Please tell me it's not Corey Clement.
It's actually Wendell Smallwood. Wendell Smallwood started the game. He started the game, and it's because Ajayi's not playing, and Corey Clement is also not playing. I don't know the reasons why, if it's just because they don't want to risk anything. But it's an overcrowded backfield in Philadelphia. Add in Darren Sproles to those 3 guys. Add in some other guys. They have a lot of weapons. They have 2 tight ends that they're both using in this preseason game tonight. I just think there's a lot of people there, a lot of mouths to feed, and it's just not a guy I've ever really been that warm to. So at the fourth round, eighth pick, 44th overall, running back 20, there are other guys in that neighborhood I would much rather have, like Lamar Miller.
All right, and I certainly don't disagree with you on that. I do find myself taking Ajayi in certain places, but for the most part, it's because he's fallen below this point. I don't know that I'm taking him in the fourth unless I'm really desperate for a running back at that point. But all right, so let's get to it. The final category we have tonight, and I think it's one of the most fun ones out there. It's who's the guy that you are overdrafting because you have to get him. Sal, I'll start off because I really am taking this opportunity to say I hate you for doing this ahead of me in a draft that we are currently in right now. It made me very angry. John Brown is a guy that I obviously have touted for a long time and that I am taking ahead of his ADP in just about every draft I've been in. Sal went above and beyond to take him in this one. I forget what round you took him in, but he's currently going in the 18th round in most drafts. There isn't even 18 rounds in this draft. It's only a 14-round draft. So, I don't know. I don't know how early you took him, but I think we were in the 10th round, maybe.
I'm looking it up right now. I'm opening up that
All
draft.
right. So yeah, I think it might have been the 10th. Anyway, John Brown in the 18th round is an absolute steal in my opinion. He is tearing up camp. Joe Flacco loves to throw the ball deep. He's the perfect type of receiver for Joe Flacco. The only issue that John Brown has had throughout his career is health. And I get it. That is a concern. He has not been able to stay on the field. However, if you're getting him in the 18th round or the 16th round or the 15th round, 14th round, whenever you decide you want to reach for him, which I'm doing, I think that you can take that risk because you already have a good base of players on your roster. He's the exact type of guy that could end up as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 throughout the rest of the season if he stays healthy. So he's my guy. I did put 2 on this list. I'll just throw it out there, but I won't really give you too much analysis. Jamison Crowder is another guy that I'm reaching for because I love the connection. I love the fit with Alex Smith.
The Crowder's a guy I've loved in the past.
Crowder.
Crowder. You never liked him, Kevin.
Say Crowder.
Crowder. And so John Brown is a guy I really did like a lot 2 years ago. I really thought I expected big things, with the sickle cell and all that stuff and some nagging injuries. He was tagged a big play guy. But what we're seeing, I think, in this preseason is that he's being used in other ways. He caught a short red zone touchdown the other night at the back of the end zone, a very nice bobble pull and catch. And, I've seen Kevin has been never given up on a guy and has touted him, and kudos to Kevin for that. I think he's going to be the wide receiver one in that offense over Crabtree this year. I just really do. So for me, it ended up being a 9th round that I took him in, Kevin.
Nice.
16-team league. So, you got to adjust that out to be
Obviously
more like the 11th to 12th round probably in a 12-team league, right? So it definitely still above. I cannot believe his ADP is 18th round. That's madness. So no argument at all, but reaching for Smokey.
Get the smoke on your roster. All right, Steve, who do you got?
All right, I'm just going to throw out somebody real quick that has, for some reason, even though, again, I seem to be picking all these starting running backs on their own team that are being drafted in the 8th round or later, and this is going to be Carlos Hyde. He is going 8.10 overall in 12-team leagues, 94th overall, and as running back 35. He is the starting running backs for the Cleveland Browns, a team that has got a really good offensive line. They've got a new quarterback that is mobile that helped LaShawn McCoy achieve some pretty hefty rushing totals as well. And even Kevin, who gave me flack for drafting him in this very same 16-team league that we were talking about right now, gave me flack for drafting him as my RB2, said at the beginning of this podcast, wow, Carlos Hyde is eating right now. And that's what I expect him to do for the majority of the season. So he is another starting running back. You can draft 2 starting running backs in the 8th and 9th rounds of your draft in Carlos Hyde and Jamal Williams and have very, very, very good results with that, I promise you.
He is getting a lot of the touches in the game tonight. Nick Chubb only 1 touch in the first half. It did go for 21 yards. So Chubb has looked good on his carries, but definitely not getting the amount of touches that Carlos Hyde is getting. So at least for the early part of the season, how I look at Carlos Hyde, Steve? Draft him. Hopefully starts off good. Trade him.
Yes, I would agree with that. I would agree with that wholeheartedly.
It's a great point.
All right, so rounding out the show and the category for me is Taiwan or Taywan Taylor, however you want to say it. And a lot of the good reasons Kevin gave for Corey Davis at the top of the show. I think Corey Davis will have a good year as well. I think both of these young second-year wide receivers are going to be big factors in that offense. Richard does not worry me. I know he got the new contract, but there's a lot of the way that contract was written out, they could essentially get rid of him. It won't cost them a lot of money. And it's very simple. He's not being drafted. He's not even on the ADP for at 4for4.com right now, and they go up to 21 rounds. So here's a guy you could take in the absolute last round of your drafts. If you're in some stupid league that has kickers and defenses, you could take him behind the kickers and the defenses. Going into last week or in the middle of last week, he had gotten the most snaps out of any wide receiver in training camp. He had gotten the most targets. He was on the field the most. It's just you've seen a burst that he turned on for that touchdown last week. He, to me, Kevin, gets me excited the way Tyler Lockett gets you excited. I think he has that type of big play, game-breaking ability. I don't know that he's going to be better than Corey Davis, but I think he's going to be a very good wide receiver.
And here's a pro tip for you, Sal. In those leagues where you have kickers and defenses where your draft doesn't require you to fill every position, take Taywan Taylor instead of a kicker and instead of a defense, and draft yourself the extra player. And then as you get through training camp and as you're working through, when you need to start one, you can go figure out who you need to drop. And it just gives you the ability to make that choice later. So do that if that's your league settings. But we do also recommend you get rid of the kickers and defenses altogether. So, all right, Steve, that's it for us. We are way behind on time. So you can wrap us up with your final thought.
All right. Thank you all for listening to this draft spectacular for the Fantasy Football Funhouse. You can find us on Twitter at FF Funhouse. You can find us at fantasyfootballfunhouse.com. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. You can check out all the social media sites that you would want to out there, and you will find the Fantasy Football Funhouse there. And that's all. Sal.
I just want to remind you to head over to thequantedge.com and use the code FFFunhouse to get 15% off all the amazing game-breaking tools that they have there, the exclusive podcast to members only, and the great writing that you get from 10 fantasy experts. Also support gridironexperts.com, great partner and sponsor of the show as well. And head over to Twitter and click on that article, man. I want to hit 4,000.
Yeah, definitely check out Sal's article. And you're right, Sal. Big thank you to our partners over at Gridiron Experts. Check out their website, and you can find our feed for the podcast there as well. So, and they have a lot of other great content and podcasts there too. So definitely check that out. And I want to remind everyone, as always, to add a charitable aspect to your fantasy football playing experience. If you could, donate some league fees, get together as a group, do some charity activities, clean up a park, plant a tree, whatever you want to do. However you can get involved in.
Gotta learn to reduce, reuse, recycle.
Whatever you can do to help people's life, improve those who need it. If you can do it through fantasy, it'll just make that experience that much better. We will be back to you next week with more great draft and preparation content as we continue with the 2 a week here, which was only one this week, but we'll be back with 2 next week. So until then, Steve, hit the button.
Step this way, want 2 nickels, 1 dime, a 10th part of a dollar. We've got the show if you've got the dime. It's just starting.
Fantasy Football Funhouse, Football Funhouse, Football Funhouse.